They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I say it's best served with a side of $3 million and the sound of your boss choking on his morning coffee when he realizes what you've done. My name is Morgan Reed, and 6 months ago, I was the top sales executive at Helix Dynamics. Today, I'm the founder and CEO of my own consulting firm that just acquired their biggest client portfolio. This isn't just a story about revenge, it's about justice, and how sometimes the line between the two becomes beautifully blurred. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. The cherry blossoms outside our downtown office building were in full bloom, casting delicate shadows across my desk as I prepared for my quarterly performance review. The numbers spoke for themselves. I'd exceeded my targets by 43%, brought in 7 new major accounts, and salvaged 3 failing client relationships that everyone else had written off as lost causes. My commission check was going to be spectacular. Or so I thought. Morgan, have a seat. Richard Keller, our VP of Sales, gestured to the chair across from his immaculate glass desk. At 53, Richard had mastered the art of looking perpetually disappointed while simultaneously showing off his expensive watch collection. Today it was a Patek Philippe that probably cost more than my car. I sat down, straightening my navy blazer and crossing my legs. The confidence I'd walked in with was already beginning to waver under his cold stare. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "We're restructuring the sales department." I reached for the folder, a small knot forming in my stomach. Inside was a formal letter with the Helix Dynamics letterhead. "Effective immediately, you're being reassigned to the inside sales team," Richard continued, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your external accounts will be divided between James and Natalie." James and Natalie, the VP's golf buddy and his former executive assistant who'd recently made the jump to sales. Neither had closed even half the revenue I had in the past year. "I don't understand," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My numbers are the highest in the department. I just closed the Sunstream Technologies account last week. That's a 7-figure deal." Richard leaned back in his ergonomic chair. "This isn't about your numbers, Morgan. The executive team feels that James and Natalie better represent the future direction of Helix. They have a certain polish that resonates with our premium clients." A certain polish. I knew exactly what that meant. James played golf with the C-suite every weekend and laughed at all their jokes. Natalie was striking, 10 years younger than me, and had a trust fund that allowed her to wear designer clothes that made my carefully budgeted wardrobe look painfully middle class. "This is a demotion," I stated flatly. "We prefer to call it a strategic realignment," Richard replied, a thin smile stretching across his face. "Your base salary will remain the same, though of course, the commission structure for inside sales is different." Different meant substantially lower. Inside sales at Helix was where careers went to die. It meant cold calls, dealing with low-level procurement staff, and commissions that were a fraction of what I was currently earning. "Is this negotiable?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "The decision has been finalized by the executive team," Richard said, glancing at his watch. "I have another meeting in 5 minutes. HR will send over the paperwork for your new role. I suggest you use the weekend to adjust your expectations." I walked out of his office in a daze, the letter clutched tightly in my hand. 12 years at Helix Dynamics. 12 years of missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and 3 a.m. emails to accommodate international clients. 12 years of proving myself over and over again, only to be sidelined because I didn't have the right connections or the right look. My desk was in the corner of the office with a view of the city skyline, a coveted spot I'd earned after my first big year. As I sat down, I noticed James watching me from across the floor, a smug smile playing on his lips. He already knew. My computer pinged with a new email notification. It was from IT. "Per management request, your system access will be modified effective Monday morning to reflect your new role. Please back up any personal files before then. For security purposes, access to previous client accounts will be revoked." They weren't just demoting me, they were cutting me off from the clients I'd spent years cultivating. Clients who trusted me, who called me directly when they had problems instead of going through official channels, clients who renewed their contracts because of our relationship. Something inside me hardened in that moment. A cold clarity washed over me as I looked around the office, at Richard's corner suite, at James and Natalie laughing by the coffee machine, at the motivational posters about teamwork and integrity that suddenly seemed like cruel jokes. I'd given this company everything. And in return, they'd decided I wasn't valuable enough to keep around. Well, two could play at that game. I spent the next hour doing what any reasonable person would do. I cried in the bathroom, called my best friend to rant, and seriously contemplated keying Richard's BMW in the parking garage. But after washing my face with cold water and reapplying my makeup, I returned to my desk with a plan forming. First, I needed to assess what leverage I actually had. My client list was impressive. I'd built relationships with CTOs and procurement directors at over 30 major companies. But Helix owned those relationships on paper. Our contracts had strict non-solicitation clauses, and violating those would mean lawsuits I couldn't afford to fight. But there was a loophole. A beautiful, perfect loophole that Richard and the executive team had been too arrogant to notice. For the past 2 years, I'd been pushing for Helix to adopt a new CRM system that would streamline our client management process. The old system was clunky, outdated, and required manual updates that most of the sales team neglected to do. My proposal had been repeatedly shelved in favor of other priorities. As a workaround, I'd created my own client management system using a combination of secure cloud services. It contained detailed notes on every client interaction, preference lists, contract renewal dates, and potential upsell opportunities. Information that wasn't in Helix's official system because the company had never bothered to implement proper tools. The best part? I'd built this system on my personal time, using my personal devices, and had never officially integrated it with Helix's systems, specifically because IT had told me they didn't have the bandwidth to support it. In other words, that data was mine. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Devin Wu, a brilliant software developer I'd met at a tech conference last year. Devin had recently left his corporate job to start his own firm and had been trying to convince me to join him as a partner. Still looking for a sales director with an established client network? Let's talk. Tonight? His response came almost immediately. Always, drinks at the Astor, 8 p.m. Perfect, I replied, a smile spreading across my face for the first time that day. Next, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small notebook where I kept the direct phone numbers of my top clients. Not their office lines, but their personal cell numbers given to me over dinners, conferences, and years of building trust. These weren't company property either. I spent the rest of the afternoon quietly backing up my files and clearing personal items from my desk. To anyone watching, I appeared to be diligently working, occasionally nodding and forcing a smile when colleagues passed by. Inside, I was calculating exactly how much Helix was about to lose. At 5:30, I left the office with a light step, waving goodbye to the security guard in the lobby. "Have a good weekend, Morgan," he called. "Oh, I intend to," I replied. "It's going to be life-changing." The Astor was an upscale cocktail bar downtown, dimly lit with leather booths perfect for private conversations. Devin was already there when I arrived, nursing a whiskey sour and typing rapidly on his laptop. "That bad, huh?" he said, looking up as I slid into the booth. Devin and I had kept in touch since the conference, occasionally meeting for drinks to discuss the industry. I'd mentioned my frustrations with Helix's management before, but had always stopped short of accepting his offers to jump ship. "Worse," I replied, signaling the waitress for a martini. "They demoted me to inside sales, effective immediately." Devin's eyebrows shot up. "You? Their top performer?" "Apparently, I don't have the right polish for premium clients," I said, making air quotes around the word. "They're giving my accounts to James Harper and Natalie Pierce. James can barely explain the difference between cloud storage and a hard drive." Devin scoffed. He'd met James at a networking event once and had been unimpressed. "And Natalie's been in sales for what, 6 months? Welcome to corporate politics," I said as my drink arrived. To be fair, they're both very good at laughing at the CEO's jokes. Devin closed his laptop. So you're finally ready to have a serious conversation about joining my company? I took a sip of my martini, savoring the moment. I'm ready to have a serious conversation about becoming your partner. For the next 3 hours, Devin and I outlined a plan that was equal parts business strategy and sweet revenge. His company, Nexus Solutions, was still in its early stages but had revolutionary software that could genuinely help most of my clients. He had the technical expertise but needed someone who could get his product in front of the right people. People I already knew. People who trusted my recommendations. By midnight, we had drafted a partnership agreement. Devin would handle the technical side, and I would bring in the clients. We'd split the profits 50-50, and I would have complete autonomy over sales strategy. There's just one problem, Devin said as we finalized the details. Your contract with Helix probably has a non-compete clause. I smiled. It does. But I've been studying it very carefully for the past year. Ever since Richard passed me over for the sales director position. I pulled out my phone and showed him a section of my contract that I'd highlighted. The non-compete applies to companies that provide substantially similar services to Helix. I explained. Helix sells enterprise software for logistics and supply chain management. Your company provides data analytics and business intelligence solutions, different enough to survive legal scrutiny. And the non-solicitation clause? Devin asked. That's trickier, I admitted. I can't directly solicit Helix clients for 1 year after leaving, but there's nothing preventing me from announcing my new position to my personal and professional network. And there's nothing preventing clients from deciding on their own that they'd rather work with me than with James or Natalie. Devin grinned. You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of motivation today, I replied. We clinked glasses, and for the first time since walking into Richard's office that morning, I felt a sense of excitement. This wasn't just about revenge, though that was certainly a powerful motivator. This was about taking control of my career and refusing to let others determine my worth. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Devin and I worked nonstop to prepare materials for Nexus Solutions' new sales initiative. We created personalized presentations for each of my major clients, highlighting how Nexus could address specific pain points that I knew they were experiencing. On Sunday night, I drafted an email to my professional network announcing my new role as partner and sales director at Nexus Solutions. The email was carefully worded to remain within legal boundaries while making it absolutely clear to my clients that I was available to discuss new opportunities. Before hitting send, I took a deep breath and thought about what Monday would bring. Helix would escort me to a small desk in the inside sales bullpen. They would introduce me to my new manager, probably someone 5 years my junior. They would explain my new, reduced commission structure, and they would expect me to accept it all with a smile. Not this time. I pressed send, and within minutes, my phone began buzzing with responses. By morning, I had 17 meeting requests from current Helix clients interested in catching up and hearing about my new venture. Monday morning, I walked into Helix Dynamics for the last time. I wore my best suit, a charcoal gray Armani I'd bought myself after closing my first $1 million deal. My resignation letter was in my bag, along with a flash drive containing any remaining personal files I needed. As expected, my access badge no longer worked for the executive floor. I was directed to the 3rd floor, where the inside sales team worked in cramped cubicles under fluorescent lights. Morgan! Richard looked surprised to see me in the executive break room, where I'd stopped to grab a final cup of their overpriced coffee. Your new workspace is on 3. I know, I said calmly. I just came to drop this off. I handed him my resignation letter. His face flushed as he scanned the document. Effective immediately, this is highly unprofessional. You're required to give 2 weeks' notice. Actually, Richard, if you check Section 23B of my employment contract, you'll find that the notice period is waived if my job responsibilities are materially altered without mutual agreement. I took a sip of coffee. A demotion to inside sales certainly qualifies. Where are you going? He demanded, his voice rising slightly. I've accepted a partnership at Nexus Solutions, I replied. Never heard of them, he said dismissively. You will, I promised. Very soon. I handed him my access badge and walked toward the elevator. As the doors were closing, I saw James hurrying toward Richard, his face pale. My email announcement had clearly made the rounds. By the end of the day, 11 Helix clients had scheduled meetings with Nexus Solutions. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 23. Not all of them would convert, of course, but enough would to make a statement. 2 weeks later, Devin and I signed our first former Helix client, Sunstream Technologies, the 7-figure account I'd closed right before my demotion. Their CTO called me personally to say that when Natalie couldn't answer basic questions about their implementation timeline, they'd decided to explore other options. Honestly, Morgan, we were only with Helix because of you, he admitted. Their product is good, but not irreplaceable, and the support has been going downhill for months. 1 month after my departure, Nexus Solutions had secured contracts with 7 former Helix clients, representing over $3 million in annual recurring revenue. Richard sent me a blistering email threatening legal action, which I forwarded to our lawyer. She responded within hours, confirming that we'd remained within legal boundaries and suggesting that any lawsuit would be frivolous. The sweetest moment came 6 weeks after I left, when I received a LinkedIn message from Helix's CEO requesting a meeting. I agreed to have coffee, curious about what he wanted. I'll be direct, Morgan, he said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. We made a mistake. Richard didn't fully brief the executive team on your performance metrics before recommending the reorganization. Reorganization, I repeated, letting the corporate euphemism hang in the air. He had the grace to look embarrassed. We'd like to make you an offer to return. Sales director position, 50% increase on your previous salary, plus a signing bonus. I stirred my coffee slowly, allowing myself to enjoy the moment. I'm afraid I must decline. Nexus is growing rapidly, and as a partner, my potential earnings far exceed what Helix can offer. We can match any offer, he pressed. It's not just about money, I replied. It's about respect, recognition, and working somewhere that values results over politics. He nodded, understanding the unspoken message. As we parted ways, he handed me his card. If you ever change your mind. I never did. 1 year later, Nexus Solutions had expanded to a team of 35 and moved into new offices with a view that made my old Helix desk look like it faced a parking lot. Devin had developed 3 new products based on feedback from our clients, and we were projecting $12 million in revenue. Helix, meanwhile, had lost 15 major clients and was rumored to be seeking a buyer. Richard had been quietly replaced, and James had moved on to another company. Natalie, surprisingly, had reached out to congratulate me on Nexus's success and to ask for advice on starting her own consulting business. I met her for coffee and gave her honest guidance, including the most important lesson I'd learned. Your value isn't determined by those who fail to see it, but by what you know you can achieve when you refuse to accept their limitations. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just success, it's creating success on your own terms. And taking a $3 million client list with you doesn't hurt either. As I stand at the window of my corner office today, watching the same cherry blossoms that were blooming when Richard delivered his strategic realignment news, I can't help but smile. They say business isn't personal. But sometimes, making it personal is the best business decision you'll ever make.